A sizable earthquake occurred on the 4th, a magnitude 6.7 at Tonga. It was the only strong seismic event in the forecast period. We see critical planetary geometry with Mercury, that was on the 29th, and it was followed by critical planetary geometry involving Venus early on December 1st, and then we see this high lunar peak reaching 18 on the index, and the forecast was that increased seismic activity could occur around the 2nd, maybe the 3rd if it would arrive late. Well, it did arrive late, it occurred a day later on the 4th. And this is the variable that we have. We do not know exactly when the larger seismic activity is going to occur. All we can do is anticipate the largest seismic activity that follows on the critical planetary and lunar geometry. And this is a typical example that the anticipated seismic activity occurs with the 2nd lunar peak rather than the 1st that follows on the critical planetary geometry. In the coming week, there are no critical conjunctions. We have Sun, Earth, Mars on 8 December at 5:34 UTC, but I do not really consider this a critical conjunction. And then on the 12th, Sun, Mercury, Saturn, that is more critical. So the critical conjunctions are basically in the second half of December. Looking at the SGI graph, what we see is some critical geometry involving Venus and Mercury. Mercury is the red peaks and Venus represented by the purple peaks. We could consider this a second level of critical geometry that accounts for the higher 5, borderline 6, low 6 magnitude earthquakes that are very difficult to anticipate. And this is actually a new SGI model based on long-time observations with stronger seismic activity, critical planetary geometry, the positions of the planets and the moon, they repeat themselves, and this is what we've come up with. And we could see, based on this new model, increased seismic activity throughout the week, but I do not expect it to be really much, probably not magnitude 7, but we could see some clustering of stronger seismic events. This could approach magnitude 6, it could just go over magnitude 6. This could be as early as later today or tomorrow following the critical planetary geometry here on 5-6 December. Possibly a peak may occur around 8-9 December. We have a second lunar peak here with critical geometry involving Mercury and Venus converging. And what we often see is that when we have critical planetary geometry, the lunar peak that follows, that's often the marker of increased seismic activity. So that's why I point to 8 December, 9 December, and because of this convergence here, possibly 10 December. We also look at the next lunar peak, that will be 12-13 December. And we see that the lunar peak flattens here, whereas it really peaks twice within 2 days on 8-9 December and also here on the 5th and the 4th, as we saw earlier. And this is due to the fact that the planets move and the position of the moon relative to the planets, that determines the lunar geometry. And as you can see, it changes constantly. We have a relatively high lunar peak on 13 December, 15 on the index, and it more or less coincides with critical geometry involving Venus. We also have this planetary geometry involving Mercury, that's the Sun, Mercury and Saturn in an alignment early on the 12th. It is possible that a larger seismic event will happen around the 13th with this lunar peak. Mind you, it is the second lunar peak relative to the lunar and planetary geometry on 8-9 December. So we could see some clustering with the lunar peaks on 5-6 December and the planetary geometry here, and then 8-9 December. A larger seismic event is possible, possibly around the 9th, 10th. And in the scenario that we saw last week, it could happen with the second lunar peak, the next lunar peak, and it will be around the 13th. So we could see a quiet week, relatively speaking. That's one scenario. Another scenario is that we have some clustering of borderline 6 magnitude earthquakes, 5.8, 5.9, or into the low 6 magnitude range. We may have a single stronger seismic event coinciding with the planetary lunar geometry here. It very much depends on the condition of Earth's crust, the stress levels, and how Earth is going to respond to this critical geometry. Again, I do not expect major seismic activity. I cannot rule it out entirely, of course, but the absence of critical conjunctions is key. We don't have them until the 12th. And as I said earlier, the second level critical geometry usually accounts for the seismic events approaching magnitude 6 or just over magnitude 6. That doesn't mean that we're not going to have a stronger seismic event. It is possible that the planetary geometry here on the 6th may result in mid-6 magnitude, and the convergence here on the 9th could result in an even stronger seismic event, a higher 6 magnitude. But it is also possible that that is not going to happen until the 13th. Check out the latest forecast on the website, the magnitude probability and the forecast video, which will be updated shortly. And you can also follow us in the social media with links in the top right where we post additional updates. Be safe everyone. Until next time.